well, how can we affect? How can we affect? I'm assuming that this affects people of color more. This affects women more. This may affect younger attorneys.
Absolutely.
So how do we go about changing, the direction of a big giant ship?
We had several recommendations that were very concrete because we recognized that no one person has the power to change everything in the profession, and everyone has to do their part. So the first recommendation was for workplaces to actually have a bullying policy in place. But the reason why that's so important is that most organizations have anti-harassment policies, but anti-harassment policies are only going to encompass behaviors that are on the basis of protected characteristics.
Okay.
So bullying is not illegal under most circumstances, so people don't necessarily have recourse.
Yeah.
And so we looked at a policy that also addresses retaliation, because our study showed that a lot of lawyers, even if they're in a scenario where there might be HR, only 20% of lawyers actually reported this behavior and fear of retaliation, which makes a lot of sense.
Just specifically on that, do you think that's fear of retaliation? Is there some element of expectation? It is so ingrained in the culture of being an attorney in the law practice that somebody goes, well, that's just going to happen. Is there a level of expectation from people where they don't think anything's going to be done? I guess is really.
You hit the nail on the head. There are a lot of people who feel that when they have reported, the response that they've received is, you're just talking about being a lawyer. The things you're talking about, we are adversarial, we are competitive. And so this is just kind of a rite of passage. And that's one of the things we're really trying to disrupt, is this notion that this kind of aggression, intimidation, humiliation is actually an intrinsic part of the profession.
Yeah. So when I think of having a bullying policy, and I'm trying to think of this kind of like stepping outside of myself a little bit, it feels like the actual word, the actual, idea of it feels kind of infantile. It feels like having a bullying policy is for elementary school. I think part of that is that we shouldn't be bullied. We shouldn't have to have it for.
Well, I'm so glad you referenced that, because I spent a lot of time thinking about that word, and that word was very intentionally chosen.
Yeah.
This idea of this study came because when I was Miss America 2003, and my platform dealt with preventing youth violence and bullying. I had to leave my high school as a result of bullying and harassment. And so I made it my national platform.
Okay.
And I talked to kids about what we should do, how we treat people, and how we don't treat people. Once I became a lawyer, I was sort of shocked to realize that so many of the behaviors that I told children were inappropriate and bullying behaviors and were wrong were behaviors that I was seeing pervasive within our profession.
Yeah.
And right now, there's a consensus that bullying is unacceptable in schools.
Right.
And so why would our standards be lower for our profession when we are officers of the court?
Right.
And so that word was chosen for legal reasons, because we're trying to distinguish it from harassment.
Yeah.
But also to kind of prompt that conversation. Why is it okay for a lawyer to shout at another lawyer when in a classroom we would say to somebody, you may not have to like everybody, but you have to treat everyone with respect.
Right.
Why wouldn't that be the ethos for our profession?
I like that, kind of leaning into, well, it is that way because it's that way.
Right. We've chosen to make it that way, but we don't have to leave it that way. And some of the other recommendations deal with the courtroom, because when we were asking lawyers, who are the people who are bullying you? We didn't get into demographic characteristics, but we saw that some of the lawyers were being bullied by other lawyers within their firms, but other lawyers are being bullied by opposing counsel.
Right.
And so we've talked about the need for all judges in courtrooms to have civility and bullying standing orders, because a lot of lawyers struggle with, okay, when this thing is happening to me, what does it violate so that I can actually go and tell a judge? And so we've talked about the fact that there needs to be these standing orders in place so that lawyers who are being targeted can actually go to the judge and say, this behavior that we all agreed would be the ground rules within the courtroom, it's being violated.